And welcome back, fellow football fanatics. It's college football with Sam. Still a little bit under the weather, which is why we didn't have our 6 p.m. Eastern time live. But I organized this talk about Michigan football a few days ago. Wanted to stick with my commitments here. So I brought on two people. I was actually inspired by Bald Father Betts to talk about the state of Michigan and what it could be in the future, what we think it is now, what the program has been, because the reaction from the USC loss has been rather loud and abrupt, and it's quite a change of pace from what I think the Michigan fan base was singing beforehand. So why don't you take it away and tell us what your reaction is from an outsider non-Michigan perspective?
Yeah. So Sam, thanks for organizing. Thanks for having me on. I think most of your fan base knows me at this point, but for those who don't, I have come from a betting background. So I've usually had a pretty practical look to things, and then started a channel this past last year, and that was the first time I really started to get like a lot of fan interaction. And I guess I shouldn't have been surprised because people lose money gambling on sports, but I was surprised, I guess, at non-practical reactions from fan bases and all those things. And the Michigan USC one, I've had USC minus the two for quite a bit of units. At the Michigan USC one, I guess I've been very surprised at the fan base's reaction to the game. So you and I've talked, I've been very open about this. Like, I have thought Sharon Moore should be fired since last year, but I now all of a sudden it seems like the fan base wants him fired, but it seems like it's for all the wrong reasons. So I thought he should be fired last year because I don't think he's good. I think he's an idiot. I don't think he's a good coach. But it seems like now the fan base is like, what happened out at USC is unacceptable. We're embarrassed. We should be competing for a national title, and now we're out of that race. And I guess I'm a little like, I don't understand why anyone would have thought that Michigan was in that race to start the season. Like, Underwood is a true freshman. Really, the only true freshman who've gone on to do something like that is Jameis Winston, Florida State, and then Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence only played the second half of the year. The team was actually more set up in terms of being built towards something last year, when a lot of those players who are currently playing in the NFL today, Loveland being one, like the entire array of Mason Graham, Will Johnson, like all those guys were at the team last year. So like the coordination of actually having QB together with team didn't set up. And Michigan continuously through the 90s, through the 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, even under their best years under Harbaugh, has been a build to team. So like 2021 built into 22, built into the national championship in 23. And so I guess I wanted to get I think you guys are two very practical Michigan fans. What is the sentiment of the Michigan fan base right now? Why have they turned just off of one game that I don't really think the result was all that bad, or B, all that surprising? And do you guys get the sense that maybe there's a disconnect between what the overall Michigan fan base is and then what the team actually is, maybe not what it could be, and what do you guys think it ultimately could be?
Take it away, Darren.
Yeah, well, I think they're to maybe somebody from like more of the national perspective, or somebody that's kind of outside of Michigan circles. I can see how it can feel that way because the reaction to the USC game has been incredibly strong, uh, passionate, angry. I could go on and list the adjectives to describe it, but I think people know how they're feeling out there in the Michigan fan base right now. But if you're closer to it, I think like myself and Sam and others are. This is something that's been kind of simmering for a while now, going back to last season, with the struggles of Sharon Moore's first season, obviously with losses to teams like Illinois, Washington, coming close but not being able to do it against Indiana, turnovers being a major problem, quarterback play being a major problem, offensive line, which is, Sharon Moore's bread and butter. He was a former offensive lineman at Oklahoma back in the day, being a major problem. So really, I think, not trying to speak for the fan base here, because I know there's actually quite a lot of varying opinions throughout the fan base, right? But I think you're right in that there is a loud, kind of vocal majority calling for his head right now, perhaps for the wrong reasons. But there's been for a time now, I think, people kind of waiting for a really good reason or really good excuse to kind of really come in and call for his head. And you really couldn't do that, I think, even during and after last season, because let's be honest, it was his first year. The reality of it really is that Jim Harbaugh left, took a ton of the assistants and the support staff with him. I did a video yesterday where I talked about he even wanted to take the nutrition lady with him, like the lady that cooks all the food and preps all the meals. Like he was out to get everybody from that Michigan staff over to Los Angeles with him. I'm going to pat myself on the back real quick, by the way, for not saying San Diego there. This is the first time I've done it in a while. But now, starting the season off 4-2, and I'm just going to be blunt and honest, to a novice eye, it's seeming like the team is playing better when Sharon Moore isn't there. It seemed like the team maybe played better when it was Biff Poggi, even though I'm going to be, again, blunt and honest. They did not actually play better when Biff Poggi was on the sidelines and not Sharon Moore. But that's another thing. But now it really feels like, I think for these people, they feel like they have their chance to really, start piling on because, and I think you're right too. The perception and the reality are really incongruent at the moment for much of the Michigan fan base, and we can dive deeper into that too.
Yeah, I it's difficult because almost everyone who consistently follows knows that I'm a Michigan guy, but I also don't command the channel through the lens of being a Michigan fan. Like that's not how I make my predictions. That's not how I project things forward. Um, yes, I know last year and even this year I was probably higher on them than most were, but I mean, I can list like Minnesota, Nebraska, Michigan State, and some other programs that I've consistently picked to actually do better than they have. Uh, I never thought this team from a preseason angle could do better than escaping the first round, only to get probably humiliated in the quarterfinals, and that was if everything went well. If Underwood panned out, if the defense did at least a good job of reloading, and so far at 4-2, I mean, yeah, I think Michigan didn't perform quite as well against Oklahoma or USC as I thought, but that might be nitpicking. I mean, I had them starting out 4-2. They have started out 4-2. I think that the Washington game is really important, but if you want Sharon Moore, for example, to be fired, you should want him to be fired based on, I would say, the little things and not the current standing of the program, or its, even to a whole degree, its current win or loss record. Because the games at Oklahoma and USC, even the one at Nebraska, was always going to be tough. And last year, yeah, they should have gotten a quarterback. But even if they did, you're probably still looking at, 9-3, maybe you go 10-2. I think that the cloud over Michigan and Sharon Moore, at least from my angle, is more so their future, and present, not necessarily the past, if that makes any sense.
No, I think both of you guys make a lot of sense. But I mean, both of you mentioned the record, right? And to have in your first 6 games, to have at Oklahoma, who has overperformed this year, to have at Nebraska, who, given the fact that they have a 7.5 game win total to start the season, which I feel like a lot of people have forgotten, has overperformed. And then at USC, who outside of a dud at Illinois has also performed really well. To be at 4-2 through 6 games, like if you're judging it based off of the body of work, I really don't see why people would have that big of an issue with what Moore has done. And he was left with a decently bare cupboard from Harbaugh. You talked about from the staff standpoint how it was bare. From the player standpoint, 2024 was a bit more there was a bit more left in the cupboard, but 25, you're still bringing in and developing a lot of guys. From a recruiting standpoint, Moore is actually overperforming what the previous staff did when you look at where Michigan is coming in. So it's like, if he's actually going to have a chance to be successful with his program and with his team, it feels like Michigan's setting up to not even really give him that opportunity or that chance. And the back half of the schedule, the last 6 games, sets up quite nicely for Michigan and for Underwood to keep on developing. I don't know. I told Sam I'm probably not going to have an official play on it. I may have an official play on it. I'm like, I think Michigan's going to handle Washington pretty well this next Saturday. We'll see. So then if they get through that, I mean, really up until the Ohio State game, these things line up quite nicely for Michigan. I agree with you. The outlook of how, especially Underwood in the offense, played under Pogge versus under Moore was not a good, to the casual naked eye fan. They were trying to. I've had this conversation with Sam before. I was very surprised when Underwood, outside of for the financial reason, picked Michigan because of his style of quarterback much more fit what LSU did throughout the history of their program versus what Michigan does. Like, he's not a under the center, play action, keep it at 20 to 25 pass attempts per game. Like, he is a shotgun, spread them out, 35, 40 pass attempts per game. And you could see under Pogge, I think, they went a little bit more towards Underwood's strengths, and under Moore, they still try to run the same offense that they had under Harbaugh that ultimately is Michigan football, but sometimes maybe that doesn't line up with what Underwood's strengths are. But again, it's a 2-game sample size under Pogge versus like a 4-game sample size with Underwood under Moore. That's making a lot of assumptions, right? And I think the program has actually performed pretty well given the circumstances in the past 2 years of what's happened. In the fan base doesn't really seem to have any sort of pulse on that, and they expect something. I feel that, like, I don't care if, like, Nick Saban was the head coach this year. Like, I don't think Michigan would win a national title. So where does that sense come from? Is it just that after 23 things were so high and they felt so positive about Harbaugh and they felt so positive about the program that there's this renewed sense of expectation for the team? Or is it just that some people are Michigan fans, they see the Block M and they think we should compete, we should win national titles, and that's the expectation here, and if you're not doing that, then we have to move on?
Well, I think to really answer that question, we have to run it back, right? We have to run it back to 2023, late 2023, when Harbaugh left and Sharon Moore was announced as the new head coach. It's almost a case of wildly over-promising and under-delivering, but it's not really on Sharon so much as it is. I'm just going to be honest, because I'm pretty salty this week with everything out there being said and things being thrown around and people tweeting that this team should hire John Gruden. I'm beside myself in anger with a large segment of this fan base, but maybe that's just me. I have high standards for the fans of this team. We should be better than wanting to hire John Gruden, but I digress. The Michigan media, and I'll even lump myself in on this. I put out videos talking about how, like, here's the path. Here's how Sharon Moore, as the new head coach in Michigan football, is competing for national championships. Here's the blueprint. This is great. And we were honestly fed a lot of rat poison looking back on it. The key word was continuity. Everyone said continuity. It's going to be the same culture. It's going to be the same program. It's going to be the same level of development. Yeah, Ben Herbert left, but we're replacing him with I'm blanking on his name, but like his underling, his understudy.
Justin Tress.
Justin Tress, thank you, was promoted to strength and conditioning. We retained this guy, retained that guy. We still got, for that season leading into 2024, we got Alex Orji, this prime athlete who's going to be, a Cam Newton style running quarterback. And that's also on me. I'll admit it. I also put out a video talking about how good of a quarterback Alex Orji could be if they run like wing T style stuff, which frankly they weren't prepared to do anyway, but that's a whole other discussion. So that was wildly out of line with reality. And I think that's led to where we are today, where the feelings, the emotions, the the standpoint of the fans and their perception of the program right now is wildly out of line with where this program is really at. Because what was really happening behind the scenes is there was a hard program reset, like with Jim Harbaugh leaving, with all those assistants leaving, with frankly what was a, and we've seen it. We saw it this past weekend in the USC game. A massive, massive regression at the defensive coordinator position because Jesse Minter is miles above Wink Martindale in terms of being a college level defensive coordinator.
Look at what he's doing in the NFL. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
that's evidence of it right there.
Well, he actually knows that like a defensive end should be playing defensive end, especially at the college level, and not trying to play linebacker, and that linebackers should be playing linebacker, and that safety should be playing safety, and that we shouldn't be asking our safeties to close down and set a hard edge on GT counter, which is GT counter. USC got 30 yards on GT counter. I live right by West Catholic High School in Grand Rapids. They run GT counter all the time. It's a high school play. The middle schools are running GT counter, and Lincoln Riley ran it on us for 30 yards. Thank you, Wink. But anyway, no, it was a hard program reset, and I'm afraid that because the perception is so divorced from the reality still, that there's still so many people out there that expect this program to be, competing for. I had people in my Discord, I had people that regularly, comment and watch my channel telling me that the ceiling for this team was 12-0, that they could get into the playoff and they could do this and could do that. And frankly, over the offseason, I was kind of thinking, like, do you guys realize this is a program with a freshman quarterback, questions along the offensive line, lacking wide receiver talent, having lost, by the way, if anyone's been paying attention, Will Johnson is tearing it up in the NFL right now. He's one of PFF's highest rated cornerbacks this season, excuse me. Having lost guys like that on the defensive side of the football, like, where are we going to go 12-0? Going, to your credit, like you said, going on the road to Oklahoma, going on the road to USC, like, those are good teams. And I think there's also some Michigan fans need a wake-up call and realize that other teams have good players too. Other teams have good coaches too. Other teams are trying to win football games. Lincoln Riley's a good coach. Brett Venables a good coach. There's no shame in losing to those guys, especially on the road. And this idea that we're just going to barrel through the season and go 12-0 with a freshman quarterback and an offensive line that's still developing and a defense that's wildly regressed was divorced from reality. I'm a future mental health counselor. I got a copy of the DSM-5 sitting right over here. It's borderline schizophrenic.
Yeah, I think that what Michigan fans missed, and I think what I missed initially, but I adjusted to it pretty quickly after that Texas game, was when you recruit the way they did to win it all, but then you have the staff, and you combine those two things without a top 10 talent roster. And it would be one thing if it wasn't top 10, but if it were balanced and pretty equal at a variety of positions. It's another thing when it's a top 15 roster, but almost everything's at defense, a little bit at offensive line, tight end, running back, and you just do not care about quarterback and wide receiver. That's a different thing. And with that staff leaving, a NFL and college head coach, a NFL assistant at defensive coordinator who's now a successful NFL defensive coordinator, and a strength and conditioning coach that was respected as one of the best, worked with Bielema at Arkansas, worked with Harbaugh at Michigan for several years, even before the 2021 season. He was brought on in 2018. There was going to be a drop-off, not just in terms of decisions made, but in terms of scouting, in terms of development, in terms of game preparation. And the drop-off was going to be severe with an offensive coordinator in Brycen Moore that, was involved in the offense, but it was ultimately Harbaugh's offense. It wasn't like Ryan Day, who was brought into Ohio State to reinvent the offense. He did that and then he gets promoted and very much overperforms. And he actually got more on his staff from the prior regime than Moore did. Also a better coach, and had more talent. So yeah, it was truly a hard reset, and his decisions not bringing in a quarterback didn't help. And this year, I mean, the offense is much better under Chip Lindsey. Yes, it's inconsistent, but that's what happens when you don't have receivers. And Marsh and McCulley are both wildly better receivers than Michigan ever had last year. Underwood, if he's developed, is going to one day possibly be round one, pick one. There's a chance of that. The O-line, I would say it has a higher ceiling than it does last year. A running back, amazing. But defensively, there are some issues outside of talent, which Darren touched on, the lack of adjustments, the idea that against USC, and this is part of the reason why Baldfather was big on USC, why I picked USC to win, is Michigan loves to stack their front really tight inside the tackle box, and they love to either sim pressure or go all in. And against a offense that loves to get the ball out quickly, either through screens or through other ways, and they have a quarterback who's poised so he won't get freaked out by that stuff, you're going to get burned if you don't adjust. And that's precisely what happened. And Michigan's defensive line took a step back, so they couldn't clean up everything. And yeah, I think that Michigan fans really struggle with the idea, because I do too, of tasting the greatness of 21 through 23, where you were able to see through a 3-year window, you match up well with Ohio State, so that's why you beat them. Then the following year, you get better, and that, along with some luck that goes your way, helps you beat them again and win the Big Ten. And then in 23, they probably game plan better than you because Harbaugh can't make in-game adjustments, but it doesn't matter because you brought everyone back. So now you're, for the first time maybe in the 21st century, you're better than they are. Your players are better outside of receiver. So you beat them again. And that time you win it all because your roster's that good. So going from that to then 8-5 is a pretty crushing defeat, I would say. And I just think you need to accept reality that because of circumstances, this is a bit of a rebuild, and we'll see how the rest of the year goes. But if he wins out and they beat Ohio State, he gets all of my respect, like just from that alone.
Well, and it's kind of a natural thing. Like I said in my video the other day, this is a kind of natural cycle that a lot of programs follow after hitting that peak. And I think in my video the other day I said it was really nice that Michigan got to the mountaintop, and I will always hold that 2023 Michigan team dearly, near and dear to my heart. Anyone who questions that can look at the fact that I spent like 40 to 60, I think it was like 60 to 80 hours editing and working on my video essay that I did for that team. But the natural kind of life cycle of a program in college football is that you get to that peak and then you regress, and then you got to get to that peak again and then you regress. Look at what's happened to Clemson, LSU, teams like Texas. Texas still hasn't fully gotten back to winning national championships. Miami is just now seemingly, we'll see how the rest of the season goes, but after being a dominant team in the late 90s, early 2000s, they spent years trying to figure it out, right? And going through multiple coaches and staffs. Outside of the Alabamas, and I hate to say it, but Ohio State over the past 25 years, that's the reality of college football. Like if you expect Michigan to year in, year out compete for the national title, I don't know what to tell you, because I'm 35 years old. I was 7 when Michigan won the first national title in my lifetime, and I had to wait till I was in my 30s for them to win their second. And for the majority of my adult lifetime, they've been a 9-3, 10-2, maybe 11-1 program, and that's what they are. And I'm not going to tell anyone how to be a fan or how to define their fandom or what to expect from their program. And I like to say that I have hopes and then I have expectations. That's the way I look at it. But the reality is a reality. Like that's the type of program that they've been for a long time, and that's looking like the type of program that they may be under Sherrone Moore, and to a certain extent, we got to accept that.
You 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 said it. You put Alabama and Ohio State in their own category, right? Ohio State won the title last year, and that was their first title in 10 years. When they won that title, that was their first title in 11 years. Like, I do think, I know Josh Pate talks about it a lot, so it's like a Pateism, but I do think Saban and Alabama almost corrupted fan bases of big programs around the country in thinking that's something that happens. Like that Georgia has taken a step back. They won 2 titles, and now like they're not. No one would say the Georgia team of the past 2 years or past 3 years was anywhere near the 21 or and 22 teams. So like it is a sense of fan bases have to, I think, kind of accept reality, especially in a 12-team playoff where now you have to win 3 or 4 games against really good competition to win it. That hey, 1 title in a decade is a really good feat, especially if you're getting there and you're competing and you're good. Like that's something that should be accomplished. That's good. So then last to close it and wrap it up, I'm going to essentially what I'm going to ask you guys is where do you guys think that Michigan needs to go from here, and then a little bit about like the way that they run their athletic program, because Texas and Michigan are a little bit similar in that I think there's too many cooks in the kitchen sometimes, and the reason Texas has been able to clean that up is because Chris Del Conte and Sarkisian are at a point to where like everyone who has power trusts them so they can cede their power to them to make it. And under Harbaugh, Michigan has this thing where like when it is a Michigan man, they seem to be all in more on whoever that person is than when they have someone who's not, such as a Rich Rod, right? Like they probably gave Brady Hoke a little bit too much time. To be completely honest, with the way the 2018 Ohio State game went, then into the 2019 disappointment, then the 2020 year, especially if the Ohio State game doesn't get canceled, if that's someone other than a Jim Harbaugh, there's probably a very good chance that person gets fired, and then you don't have the 21 through 23 seasons. So this whole thing of like, if it's a Michigan man, the other people who have power seem to step aside and say, it's fine, we'll let this person handle it, we trust them. And when it's not a Michigan man, there's a lot of people with a money and voice who like to raise their money and voice. So where do you think the program needs to go from here, head coach wise? Like I said, I am someone who thinks that Sherrone Moore is not a good head coach, but I also don't think they should fire him right now because they lost USC. That doesn't make any sense. Like I said, they're 4-2 right now. Sherrone Moore may prove me wrong and that he is a good head coach. A 4-2 start's a pretty good start to the season. So what should they do right now? And then what does Michigan need to do to kind of unlock itself as a program overall?
Gonna let you go first, Darren, but just wanted to thank ZGS Randomness Hub. Interesting name for the $5 super chat. And to answer your question from the super chat, yeah, YouTube did freak out for a few minutes. Hope you guys win, because he's a Nebraska fan. Hope you guys win this Friday. I just picked you guys to win in the video I released before this stream. And thank you for your luck to Michigan. But take it away, Darren.
Yeah, I was going to say the Michigan man mythology is really cancerous, and I think it also points to the innate tribalism inside of the fan base too. And I think you saw that in a really ugly way in the rabid defense of Connor Stallions, but that's a topic for a whole other discussion. That also, this is really me just grinding my gears throughout this whole podcast. I hope you guys are okay with that, because I have a lot of issues with the Michigan fan base. But the thing that I keep coming back to with Sherrone, and I think this is really what you wanted me to get at when it comes to him, is keeping it in perspective. I really appreciate you highlighting that Sam and I are rather rational fans, because I kind of pride myself on that. The whole point of my channel is to kind of take what I've learned through the course of getting my degrees and applying it to my analysis of college football, which is a background in psychology and sociology. So I really try to look at the big picture and keep it in perspective. Sherrone Moore is a young head coach. with limited experience. He's shown potential at times. I think even Michigan fans tend to forget and have short memories when it comes to him winning as an interim on the road against Penn State, him winning against Ohio State, him being 2-0 now against Ryan Day. There are flashes of brilliance at times. There are upsides, and I think there's a reason why Jim Harbaugh kind of anointed him as the one to take over when he left the program. I think Jim Harbaugh did see some things in him, and the thing that I really could keep coming back to, and why I'm not on the fire Sharon bus yet. I'm definitely on the fire Wink bus though. Get rid of that guy as soon as possible. I am done. I'm also done with the amoeba defense. I think it's seen its time in college football. The meta game is moving on from it. That's a whole other discussion. But Sharon Moore, in his short time, and you hinted at it a little bit ago, has recruited better than Harbaugh ever did. I know a lot of people like to point to Larry Ellison and his, evil villain mustache goatee, whatever you want to call it, and his girlfriend that's half his age as being the reason why Bryce Underwood is here, and them dropping a bag and Queen Jolene or whatever you want to call her with your AI generated art you make of her. Do what you will with your free time. I'm not making AI generated art of a woman I've never met before, but that's just me. Bryce Underwood credits Sharon Moore all the time in interview after interview for sticking it out in his recruitment and really making sure that he came to Michigan. Sharon Moore lined up a lot of the stuff for NIL to get him here as well. Sharon Moore has now put together back-to-back classes of 5-star quarterbacks lined up after Bryce Underwood, and he's got a top 10 class coming in this year with Xavion Hyder at running back, a number of notable players, and he's already putting together a great recruiting class in the next cycle. With his youth, and if he really gets it together with the level at which he recruits, he could really have a long, sustained amount of success. He really could. But to your credit, Baldfather, like what you were saying, is right now in some elements of the game, he's kind of an idiot. Like he's still got to figure it out as a head coach. My fear, so those are kind of my hopes, if you will. That's where I see the positive in this and why I don't want to jump off the Sharon Moore bandwagon quite yet. My fear is we're going to fire this guy and he's going to go and he's going to figure it out. And a few years from now, we're going to see him at a Big 12 program or an ACC program or even another Big 10 or an SEC program. And he's going to be consistently going 10-2, 11-1, getting to the playoff and being successful. Because I could really see that happening. I don't think somebody like Jim Harbaugh anoints you as a great future head coach, being somebody that's as experienced and knowledgeable in the game of football as Jim Harbaugh is without having some potential. So that's kind of where I sit for now. If Michigan loses to Washington this weekend, if they continue to struggle, and that'll obviously change. But as of right now, I'm not going to fire the guy for losing on the road to Brent Venables and Lincoln Riley with a freshman quarterback. I just can't do that.
Yeah, I can't do that either. I do struggle with the Wink thing because, look, I know Michigan doesn't have the same first rounders on defense that they did, but they have capable bodies. Like, you watch what Jim Knowles has at Penn State, and I mean, to this degree, Penn State's quit, so there isn't much you can take away from that. Maybe they'll get reinvigorated by the interim, but we'll see about that. It's a tough thing to do against Iowa. Michigan has better athletes on defense than Penn State in a variety of areas, and they have more bigger, capable bodies on the lines of scrimmage. And yet, they are performing. I mean, they're not even in the top 30 of defensive efficiency now on ESPN. They're not top 10 in rushing yards allowed, or more importantly, yards per carry allowed, because total yardage is pretty subjective depending on style of play. I think that is what could be a non-negotiable for me with Moore, is if the defense keeps performing this poorly, and I think it will, because it's through 6 games. He did the same thing last year. If they don't move on from him with the step forward the offense is making, because the offense and efficiency metrics is actually better than the defense, which is frightening. if they don't get rid of him, that casts major doubts on decision making. And I do think some of the game management stuff is very lacking, and he's not a good coach right now. But he's recruiting well. I think that they've figured out how to retain their best players. They did that a while ago with NIL, but they've kept that, and they've been able to get out and recruit well. And I think that something else that I got to give credit to Moore was the OC change, because I did not think Michigan would have a top 25 offense and efficiency metrics, and they somehow do. It's just the defense isn't top 15 like I thought it would be. I think that Michigan, I think almost any blue blood outside of maybe Nebraska, if they really were to play their hand correctly, could be a rebuild program. But it's so hard to play all your cards correctly, as Ohio State has had. And even they've had some things that have bounced their way, like Urban Meyer hiring Day. Turns out Day's an even better football mind than Meyer, and he succeeds him. Like that's pretty crazy and good for them. I mean, even Alabama, they had the Mike Shula era before Nick Saban. They just had
People
their
forget
first.
about that, by the way. Sorry to interrupt, but people forget that even Alabama went through dark times.
Yes, exactly. And I think Michigan could be that. But the Michigan man thing is only going to hold them further back, because as football has morphed into what it is now, university connections and that kind of cultish togetherness, I think, matter less and less and less. Like Ohio State fans, for example, keep talking about their offensive line is so elite because 4 of their offensive linemen are from Ohio, and they can't run block. Day isn't even from Ohio, and he might be their best coach of the 21st century. Like they, in that sense, if you're Ohio State, they've moved past that. They don't need a sweater vest guy from Ohio. You can get a New Hampshire former quarterback and special teams guy who's a genius offensively and who knows how to make hires and make tough decisions. Kalen DeBoer isn't a guy from the South, and based on how this team is playing right now, they could win it all. They're second in title odds. So I think the whole idea of needing someone from within the ecosystem is, especially now, very harmful with conference expansion, with the transfer portal. I don't think Michigan thinks outside the box too much. And one final criticism I will give of Moore is, and maybe it's not a criticism, like maybe it's just a transitionary period. Michigan has lost parts of its identity, like just overall this team has. And I don't know if that's quite because of poor coaching or because, with what Baldfather said about Underwood's style, you will have to change the identity to unlock everything. And I sort of see that offensively, where sometimes they're willing to pass when I think it's third and short, run it. But if you're going to develop him and have him run the offense, you may have to do that. And he just might have to grow into it, and you grow the supporting cast to where now you can do what Ohio State does, where you can run on third and short. But you can also pass if you want to, too, because you have it all. So as for the future of the program, I think that it would do Michigan well if Moore works out. But if not, in order to make sure they can be a reload program, or attempt to be, you have to continue what Moore is doing in recruiting. If he works out, I think because Harbaugh gave his blessing, then it's all well and good. If not, they'll have to go outside of the box, because I don't know of any current Michigan man who would bring Michigan to any sort of prominence.
No, we're gonna get John Harbaugh. Sam, you didn't see that? That's floating all around social media the other day. John Harbaugh's not doing so well with the Ravens right now. Why can't he come here? We're gonna get John Harbaugh. We're gonna get John Gruden. Maybe Tom Brady wants to coach. Maybe Charles Woodson. Where's Mike Hart? Where's he?
It is. I mean, no, it's, and that's a little bit of like what led me to then ask Sam and like ask this question. Said, why don't we do one with you and Darren about that? Is like, some of what you're seeing on X and on message boards and stuff is just crazy takes from some of the Michigan fan bases of like that. No, we should fire Moore and we should go get Mike Hart tomorrow. And it's like, what are you talking? Like, what? I'm sorry, but like that's just not a logical, rational take, you know?
These
But
are the types of people that talk about their football team the way that like a 12-year-old talks about
yes,
Spider-Man. Let's just admit it. They're just writing fan fiction. That this
exactly,
is just mental masturbation, man.
exactly. That is exactly what it is. No, but I I agree with you guys. So I think Wink does have to go from that standpoint. It's not even just about like he has them in the wrong positions, but then he also in game is not making the correct adjustments. And he has you said it there, and he has a system that's played out. Like there's a reason that the Ravens got rid of him. The Ravens aren't doing good right now, but when they had McDonald, they were doing very good. And there's a reason that he lasted like a year at the Giants. And it was like, and I think even Brian Daboll realized, hey, Brian Daboll isn't the best coach in the NFL. And he was like, this isn't going to work. People have figured out your system. It's time to move on. And then you touched on it, Sam. They have to evolve on offense. I mean, one of the reasons why the offense worked so well against Ohio State that stretch. I don't know if either of you guys watched the Bills-Falcons game this past Monday night. The Bills ran a 4-2-5, which is essentially what Ohio State was running during that stretch, at least in the latter portion of it after Knowles kind of was like, okay, I'm going to fully move to that. The weakness of a 4-2-5 is a power run game. And you saw what Atlanta did to the Bills defense when they had the ability to do that. Now, the Bills had Matt Milano out, and one of the keys to a 4-2-5 is having a true linebacker who's phenomenal there. But like it lined up very well for what Michigan was doing, the fact that they were elite at doing it, to then being able to get and beat Ohio State. And Patricia isn't running, he is running 4-2-5 some, but he's much more multiple in like his scheme and his system at Ohio State. And he loves a 3-4, like that's his bread and butter. And a 3-4 does very well against a power run game because you have the linebackers freed up to be able to get the gaps and beat that. And then to the fact of you do have a quarterback who's generational, who's round one, pick one talent. And if you are going to unlock him, you're going to have to move away from that sort of two tight end power run game scheme. And that goes to my last point. Like they have to go get some wide receivers in the portal this offseason. I mean, it didn't work out for Penn State, but I commend them for actually trying, right? And going out and getting Pena and getting some guys in there with a pulse who actually can catch a ball. And Michigan needs to make those moves. And I agree with you. If you see Moore learn from the in-game coaching mistakes, and he doesn't, look like a player pregame, like screaming and yelling, and he looks more like a CEO, and he has the time management stuff gets cleaned up and all that stuff. The other things that he's doing with the program, like from a recruiting standpoint and all that, seem to be very positive. So if he can marry a bit of matching Harbaugh's style when it comes to coaching and in-game and being pretty level-headed and all that, with then what he's doing on the back end with the donors and the program and recruiting, I think Michigan will be fine. But there's some changes that have to be made, and that's. But I really enjoyed the exchange. I do have to get out of here, but that was pretty much the exact conversation I wanted to have. I'm glad that you guys are. It's not everyone who has these takes on Michigan that all the people on Twitter and or X, are saying. And I do think that a 4-2 start to a season with the 3 road games they had and a freshman quarterback and losing the talent that they lost in the NFL draft, like, yeah, okay, the USC game didn't look great, but everyone pumped the brakes. Like it's not the sky isn't falling and it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Darren, do you want to? I kind of want to talk about this more if you do have the time. Are you available to?
I got a little bit of time. My wife just texted me telling me I need to turn the volume down, so I'm gonna try to do that. So I'm not, happy wife, happy life, or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the boss. So, yeah,
right. That's the CEO of Darren Talks Ball over there. So,
all right, y'all. I'll see you guys.
Yep.
See you, man. Great talking to you.
Bye.
Yeah. So like speaking of the whole sky is falling thing that he just referenced, I do kind of like to continue with that. I think that some people overreacted because they didn't realize how good USC is when they play at peak efficiency. Like, you introduced me, for example, the game on paper, which is lovely because it's laid out
Yeah.
nicely. It does inform you of a lot of things, especially as the season goes on. We're 6 games in, and they're still first in adjusted EPA per play. Like, that's
Yeah.
a lot of teams would have a tough time going out there and winning with
Yeah.
that environment and situation.
Yeah, they scared me when any a game on paper is God's gift to football, man. I love that website. I'm such a stats nerd, and I can just look at those spreadsheets all day. It really scared me early in the season when they were playing, lesser teams. They're playing like FCS teams and lower level FBS opponents. But the way in which they were just maxing out all of the efficiency statistics, I think at one point they were at like 13 yards per play. And to put it into perspective for people that aren't familiar with that statistic, peak Ohio State back in like 2021 with CJ Stroud was at like 7 or 8 yards per play, or maybe 9 if I remember right. Like they were just off the charts, just as efficient as hell, balanced as hell, effective running the football and throwing the football. And I think the thing to really put things into perspective for Michigan too is, one, you're right. It's an extremely good offense. It's extremely efficient. It's captained by a better quarterback in Jaden Maeva. They've improved at several positions. They kept the wide receivers that they should have kept. They let the other wide receivers that they should have let go. Um, and Michigan is it's just a bad schematic matchup for Michigan. A lot of the stuff comes down to like the rock paper scissors of does your scheme match the other team's scheme well? And like Ballfather Betts was saying, the weakness of the 4-2-5, and we can get a bit into the X's and O's here too with what Wink was doing in this game. The running a 5-2 against those offensive fronts was just those offensive alignments was just criminal. I mean, it just the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night, that's for sure. But the weakness of the 4-2-5 is that power run game, and in USC actually, I know this kind of goes against the conventional wisdom out there of what USC is and what they like to do. They do like to run a bit of power run. They ran some gap stuff. They ran straight up power with a tight end, shifting, motioning back into the backfield to act as a fullback to be the lead blocker. Like I said earlier, they ran GT counter, and then they run the screens. And with as aggressive as Wink is, with his 80% blitz rate, and just sending guys time after time after time across the line of scrimmage, that's not a great way to approach attacking a hyper quick, hyper efficient USC offense, and that's what we saw. So going forward, I do think the defense would probably perform better against other teams with more downfield passing attacks and more zone running schemes and power. That's just a little bit to kind of put it into perspective. Again, I don't think the sky is necessarily falling. The only people the sky is falling for is, again, the people that thought that somehow this team is going to compete for, ultimately compete for the Big Ten or a good playoff spot, or dare I say, at the national championship.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was higher on Michigan than a lot of people were preseason, but I had them solidly in 5th in power ratings. Like, no matter how many times people wanted to tell me they were better than Indiana or Penn State, for example, or even Oregon, I wouldn't budge on it at all. Like, there was no way from a preseason angle, looking at, the amount of X factor players Michigan had versus those other 4 teams, that I was gonna say, yeah, this is a top 3, top 2 Big Ten team. Now,
Yeah.
at the same time, Penn State's happened, but I don't think anyone thought that would happen. Indiana is awesome. Ohio State's awesome. I am going to do a little bit of a film review tonight for tomorrow on Oregon and Indiana again. Didn't get out earlier because I was sick, and still am, but I just want to do it anyway. I think Oregon's fine. Michigan, from a preseason expectations angle, I think is fine. And look, I know that The defense isn't as talented, receivers lacking, but the offense is way better. You have the
Yeah.
game against Ohio State at home, and again, defensive talent's a drop off, but it's not like Michigan is this team that is in the 90s on defense and can't get any push and has just, terribly weak, disgusting lines of scrimmage here. Like
Yeah.
it's not so bad to where you need to burn everything down or even most of it.
Right.
You need changes. And I'm not enough of an expert to know what those are, but it's probably getting rid of Wink at the end of the year. It's not that like we need to, change the entire identity of the defense because the base defense sucks. No, it's just, the 4-2-5 with McDonald and with Minter was way better than whatever this is. It's just you need a different guy. You can't teach an
Mhm.
old dog new tricks, as they say. Um, what do you think could happen with the remainder of the schedule? And what do you think should happen with the remainder of the schedule?
Well, honestly, I think anything could happen, especially if we're looking at this through the kind of the prism or the lens of today's Big Ten. I mean, like you said, I was on the same train when it comes to Penn State. I had them listed as my number one national title contender out of the Big Ten this year. I did the video essays about 2023 Michigan and 2024 Ohio State. I was getting way ahead of my skis there, way out over my skis, I should say, thinking about what my script was going to be for the Penn State National Championship video essay. So that's on me. But like you said, I think a lot of people were wrong about Penn State this season. But in the broader context of the Big Ten, I mean, we have all kinds of craziness going on. I mean, USC, the team that we just lost to, lost kind of badly late against Illinois, yet Illinois got dismantled by Indiana. Then Indiana goes and beats up on Oregon on the road, kind of unexpectedly. A lot of unexpected things are happening in the Big Ten. There's a lot of parity in the Big Ten outside of like Ohio State, you know, Oregon, Indiana, who I solidly see as the top three teams in this conference. And I think that's where Michigan fans got to put it in perspective too. Week in, week out, anyone outside of that top three, and maybe outside of like the bottom three, who I would consider to be like Purdue, maybe Michigan State, the way they're playing, and some others. I want to say Northwestern, though they just beat Penn State, so that just goes to show that the parity is there. Week in, week out, it's hard to predict, and I'm sure you're facing this as well because you're actually still doing game predictions, unlike me at the moment. So what could happen? Honestly, anything could happen, and I think we need to brace ourselves for that because I think even if Michigan went like 8-4, I would hate to fire Sharon Moore, and again, just to see him a couple years down the line, head coaching somewhere else to great success. What I think should happen, honestly, is they should be able to run the table to Ohio State because the schedule lines up really well for them. I think um, they've got some good quarterbacks. They've got to face in Demond Williams and Aiden Childs, and although Aiden Childs isn't looking very good at the moment, and some others, the quarterback from Maryland, but they don't have the talent offensively that USC does, and they play a lot of those teams at home or in environments that aren't very strong home environments for those teams, like Maryland. So, the Purdue, Northwestern, Maryland, all those games should be easily winnable, no matter what ridiculous bullshit Wink calls, where he's got defensive ends trying to cover a Hail Mary, or he's trying to run Rayshon Benny out at edge, or, even the Jay Barham to edge thing. Like, he's fine on passing downs because he's a great elite pass rusher, as a great elite speed rusher, should say. He doesn't have all of the pass rushing moves, but he's a good to great pass rusher. But they're running him out there on like early downs, and he doesn't know how to set a good hard run edge, and then a running back squirts right by him multiple times. It's just baffling. But even with doing all that stuff, you should still be able to beat, the Washingtons, the Michigan States, the Purdues of the world. So that's what should happen, in my opinion. I wouldn't be surprised at all if this team finishes 9-3 with an unfortunate loss to Ohio State because a lot of interesting stuff is going on there where Ohio State is kind of a different team schematically now, like Baldfather kind of alluded to. Um, so yeah, that's kind of my answer. That's what I think should happen is we should still be fine, but it could be 8-4, or dare I say it, even 7-5. And even if that happens, I don't necessarily know because not to go on too long here, but have Michigan fans even really thought about like what the reality will be if we fire Sharon Moore? Like, you could, like consider all of the recruits in future classes gone, decommitted. Savion Hyder decommitted. The quarterbacks, the 5 stars we have in each of the next classes decommitted. Bryce Underwood potentially transferring. Jordan Marshall, guys like that potentially transferring. Andrew Babaloa transferring. Like, are we ready for a 4 to 5 year rebuild? Because that's what it might end up being. And no, no. Kurt Signetti's not coming here. He's not bringing his JMU guys are not going to hit the portal again just to rebuild Michigan. It's not happening.
No, it's not, and I don't think he'd want to come here. I think that
No.
if there's one job that he would be willing to leave for due to him coaching at IUP and being from Pittsburgh, I think it would be the Penn State job. I think you'll get either he'll be at Indiana for life or he's going to Penn State. That's kind of
Yeah.
my theory behind all of that. And I think he'll stay at Indiana, actually. At least probability says that. I also think there's a decent, and this is a topic for another discussion, there's a decent probability that Penn State hires someone from one of the bigger schools that no one predicts them to. Still small, but like with Michigan, I don't even think Michigan, and maybe I'm an idiot here for saying this, I don't think they'd have the pull that Penn State does due to the athletic department and the whole Michigan man thing. Penn State's come out and publicly said we want to win championships, and as long as you check these pretty objective boxes, we will hire you and we will back you. I think Michigan's done a good job of backing Moore, but that's Sharon Moore. That's Harbaugh's disciple. And yeah, I think that like what will happen, what could happen. I mean, really anything could happen. I would go with at this point 9-3 with a loss to Ohio State, not just because of the Patricia thing, but like the previous 2 years, Knowles did a pretty good job limiting the Michigan offense. It was just Ohio State lost the turnover battle and played last year a terrible game offensively. Like as long as Ryan Day, like, as long as the offense doesn't have some of the inherent issues it did in 2023, and or as long as his head isn't up his own rear in play calling like it was last year, they'll be favored, and they should be favored, and they should win. I think idealistically you do want to win out. Look, if they were to go 10-2 and win out, and whether they get tiebreakers and go to Indy or they reach the playoffs, if they did that and then like lost 70-10 due to how the team is built and due to the opponent they would be playing, part of me would actually still be very impressed. Like, okay, you beat Ohio State, you won out, you beat a good Nebraska team on the road. Let's build this thing and move it forward. Honestly, I'm just kind of wait and see, and I think that's kind of the perfect place to end this. Is that Washington's going to tell us a good amount. I think the rest of the regular season will tell us a good amount. I think the Ohio State game will tell us a good amount. But the uncomfortable thing I will leave with Michigan fans is I think that barring a collapse, it is advised to ride this one out because, like looking at the Ohio State game, for example, what if Day still thinks you have to run against Michigan to beat him? And Michigan beats Ohio State because more of Ohio State's issue than Michigan's, for example. Or what if Underwood gets hurt and we have no quarterback depth? Like, we're 6 games in, and oh, my nose is getting plugged up. This may be the last thing I do tonight. We beat Nebraska. We did lose to OU, but it was his first road start, Underwood's. And USC can be a playoff team at this point. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, their D line and Michigan's O line ain't amazing, but they mauled. Like their defensive tackles looked like good defensive tackles. They after that game, they can probably beat anyone on their schedule. Doesn't mean they'll win out, but yeah, I think that realism and taking taking some Tylenol for the headache is the medicine, not chopping off your arm here.
Right. Yeah, it's chopping off your arm is usually never a good idea, right?
No. Any final thoughts? Any specific predictions about the Washington game before we get on out of here?
Not particularly. No, I actually need to get going myself here, but I really appreciate you having me on. Really appreciate these conversations, and go blue, and take a deep breath, Michigan fans. There's actually, I'll leave you guys with this, and I left people with this in my video from the other day. I happen to be a future clinician, so there's a trick when you're getting a little anxious, when you're getting a little too high. Just look around the room, find 3 things you can see, 3 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear. Really helps ground yourself, live in the moment, take it easy. Remember that it's just football. That's my parting super I guess you could say super woke future mental health, mental health awareness, big softy take over here.
I mean, there was this thing that I paid attention to on a podcast where this guy mentioned, and it didn't seem like it's kind of like the opposite of what people think of the stereotypical therapy talk is. It's just this guy like laid back in a chair. I forget if he had a cigar or not, like whatever. He just said, if you're feeling overwhelmed, just like focus on one thing in the room for a few minutes. And same thing. Like I even use that. Like it helps me focus. So thanks for the parting advice. Go blue. And to all
Go
of you
blue.
watching, make sure that you're subscribed, that you like the channel, and that you check out Darren's channel at Darren Talks Ball, and also Bald Father Bets at Bald Father Bets. See you guys soon.
See you.